26. So I want to be mindful of everyone's time. We've scheduled this TLI so that it matches up with the teaching block. So I want to stay within that those guardrails so that if you need to go and teach the next class, you can do it. So hello, I know it's hard to see. I'm a little small thing, but I'm Matt Winslow. I am a foundation professor in the psychology department and also the director of FCT&L initiatives. And I'm the facilitator for this active learning TLI. Thank you for registering and showing up today. Happy to have you here. I know that there was a reading that you were hopefully you did. I'm not going to give you a quiz, so don't worry about that. But this is what we're going to do today. We're going to talk a little bit about your reactions to the reading, and then I'm going to try to demonstrate how to use AI to create some active learning resources. But then a big chunk of our time today is going to be you playing around with AI and choosing to create some active learning resources on your own. And then we'll come back and we'll share our experiences and then we'll close it out. So I really hope that today is going to be a real active thing and we're all going to be here and leave here with something actually that you might be able to use. Oh, you can see, but you can't hear, folks. Sorry about that, Lori. Can other people, Jen, can you hear me? Paige, right on, thank you. Good, so looks like it's a Lori problem. All right, well, that's how it is, 2026. So what we want to do today, again, I want to start out by talking a little bit about what some of you told me at the end of the reading that I provided. There was a link to a form where you could provide me with some of your feedback on both the content of that document, but also your experiences with AI. And so I asked one question about the surprises about active learning that you learned about in that document. And several of you talked about the study where they found that active learning benefits first-gen and academically unprepared students the most, right? And so that is a lot of what we have here at EKU. And so, some people think that active learning is a detraction from the main part of teaching, and it's not as good, but it really is not only just as good for those kinds of students, it's actually better for those kinds of students. So that's great. Another person mentioned that the idea of content coverage equaling mere exposure, and that not really being a good thing is powerful, right? So I spent a lot of my career focusing on covering content in the classroom, coming in and thinking, here are the 8 or 10 ideas I've got to cover today in class, and I'm going to race through them and get through them. And when I left the room, I was sure that I covered all of that content, and I really did. But whether the students learned that content is a different question. And that's where active learning comes in, right? So that's what the power of active learning is, getting beyond just content coverage, just getting them exposed to information to actually having a shot at learning it, understanding it, and being able to remember it. The strategy that really many of you who responded said that you already use Think, Pair, Share in your classrooms. That's great. It is one of the easiest active learning, the simplest to incorporate, to actually carry out, but incredibly powerful. It's a lot of bang for your buck because it doesn't take long. It's not hard to prepare for. And students, once you've done it 2 or 3 times, they're just used to it. They expect it. They know how to do it. All you got to do is say, think, pair, share. And here's the question. And it just runs like clockwork after you've done it a few times. So that's a great one. If you haven't tried it, lots of opportunities. Several of you talked about the muddiest point, wanting to maybe try out that idea of the muddiest point. It goes by several different names, exit tickets. I mean, people call it different things, but again, the idea is just to get at what your students are confused about, what they are having trouble understanding the most, So that's a great active learning strategy that we can work on. And then there was actually a wide range of familiarity with AI amongst the group, right? Some of you use AI every day. Some of you are using it in your classroom. Some are using it in your own research, in your own personal life. But there are some of you who are not using it at all, are barely familiar with it. And in fact, I think one person said they're actually trying to actively avoid using AI, which is a totally legit perspective, one I understand completely. And so that's great. All of those perspectives are, useful, valid, reasonable, and we can work with anybody on any of that range of experience. People had some experience working with Gemini and also Notebook LM, which is perhaps a little bit less known, but another platform that we have access to at EKU. So of course, Gemini is one of our procured solutions along with Microsoft Copilot, but as part of Gemini, there is Notebook LM, and so we can use that with some added protections that EKU provides because we have that as a procured enterprise solution. People didn't talk very much about ChatGPT or Claude or other AIs, which is fine. I hope you saw on that document the official language from the administration about AI use. There's an AI use in the workplace policy that you should pay attention to, and be very careful whenever you put privately or personally identifiable information. You don't want to put that into AI at any time. That includes our students' names, identifying information, records, any of that stuff. That it goes for Gemini and Copilot as well as for the non-enterprise solutions. This concludes my mandatory statements about AI use in the workplace. So just have a little bit more information. Almost a couple of years ago now, we did a needs assessment for faculty, and what faculty said about what they needed from the FCT&L was that students are very passive in class, right? The students have a lack of motivation. Students don't engage in the material. Students are not adequately prepared, or underdeveloped in terms of critical thinking. These are all situations where active learning can really play a huge role in helping these students. Obviously, active learning is not a passive thing. So if you are frequently in class and there are a bunch of students who are not engaged, not talking, active learning is a way to get them really to be engaged in class. And that's what we really want, is them to be present, be thinking about things, be active in class. And so active learning is really about that. As it says in this research, active learning reduces failure by 55% compared to traditional lecture methods. So, that was from a meta-analysis, a pretty famous meta-analysis that came out 10 years ago now, but a meta-analysis of 225 studies. So this is a pretty authoritative source. So there's just, hopefully you saw in that document, there's just a ton of research, subtle research about the benefits of active learning. Hopefully I don't have to convince you of that. That's why you're here, is because you understand that active learning can benefit you and your students. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. One of the problems with active learning, of course, is that it's not what many students are used to, right? Students are accustomed to walking into class, sitting down, taking out some way to take notes, and listening for 55 or 80 minutes. And to them, that feels like learning. And they can do lots of things with those notes, like reread those notes, maybe even transcribe those notes. And that really feels like learning. That's maybe their experience with how learning works. And that feels like work. It's just that we know that it's not as effective as active learning. But when the people have done research about this, ironically, students feel like they learn less in classrooms where active learning is used than they do from straight lecture. Of course, the research shows that it's the opposite of that. And so part of our job as instructors is to help explain or convince our students that active learning really is the most beneficial thing that we can do for them in the class, and that when they are doing active learning things, they actually really are learning material better than they would if they just sat there and listened to us talk for the entire class period. So that is one of the struggles, one of the challenges for active learning is that there is some student resistance, and students I have felt in the past where I've said, okay, we're going to do this stuff. You can hear the groans and see some eye rolls and some reluctance, and and that happens. That's real, and I've experienced it, but it doesn't last long in my experience. You do it the first time I do it in class, there's some of that, but by the third or fourth class where I'm doing it again and again and again, they're used to it, right? They're ready for it, and they accept it, I think, pretty readily in my experience. So hopefully that's not going to be a persistent problem, but it is something to be aware of, that students have this sense that active learning is not all that effective when we know it's the opposite. So in the document, I talked about 6 different active learning strategies. Of course, there is a much longer list of active learning strategies that you can find lots of different places. These are just the 6 that I chose to incorporate into that reading, but there are lots of books about active learning. You can ask AI for other kinds of active learning if you wanted to. So this is a far from exhaustive list of active learning strategies, but it is just something that these are very well researched and tried and true active learning strategies. But again, if you want to explore other ones today or any other time, of course you can. But these are just ones that I included in that document. So I guess what I'd like to do is just do a kind of a live demonstration of how easy it is to use AI to create active learning resources. So I'm going to pick one. I'm going to pick the case study method, which I think is an interesting active learning strategy. I know that there are some departments on campus that use case study all the time, but it's something that you could use, I think, in any discipline, especially if you have an AI that can help you write the cases, which is what AI is really good at. So I'm going to use case study. I'm going to, in my prompt to AI, I'm going to describe the course. I'm going to try to craft my prompt carefully, and I'll talk more about that. And then I'm going to see what it gives me, and then I can refine it by going back and forth. So I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to try to switch over to this document. Okay, so I'm going to use Copilot. I might also try Gemini just to show you that both can work. I mean, not exactly the same, but both work. And so I have, oh, that is not, I got to go back to my presentation here. Hold on a second. I lost my copy here. Okay, so here's the prompt I'm going to put into this, and I'll talk about prompts and more in a minute, but here I'm prompting it. I'm saying, hey, I teach an introduction to psychology at the college level. Please write a 1-paragraph case study scenario for a class discussion on the topic for today, which is operant conditioning, specifically the concept of schedule reinforcement. If you know psychology, you know this is something that I definitely do cover in that class. The scenario should involve a realistic situation where it is genuinely unclear which schedule reinforcement is the most appropriate. There should be at least 2 defensible positions a student could argue. Do not make the answer obvious, right? I want this to be something that students have to think about. After the scenario, write 3 discussion questions. Each question should require students to apply course concepts to the case, not just recall definitions. Notice that I am not defining operant conditioning. I'm not defining what a scheduled reinforcement is. I'm referencing other course material, but I'm not saying what that course material is. And the reason I'm not doing those things is because I don't need to. AI knows about all that stuff, right? It knows the content of all of our courses. as well or better than we do. And so I didn't have to tell it what a schedule reinforcement was. It knows, right? I could, if I wanted to, upload a document that had all that information in it. So if I wanted it to take only from, my information, maybe my lecture notes or something that I want to cover that I don't think AI might know about, or I want to try and guardrail it to just that information, I could do that. I could say, please refer to this uploaded document when writing this case and choosing this information. And it would do that reasonably well. But again, for most of our classes, for many of our classes at least, AI knows the content of our discipline in an impressive fashion. So I'm not putting any of that information into this, and let's just see how it does. So Copilot's going to think about it for a minute here. I guess while we're waiting, I'll go over here to Gemini, and I'll just paste the exact same thing into that. It pastes in a little bit different way. I'll start thinking about it. And so here it is. Here is the scenario paragraph. And again, if you don't know much about schedules reinforcement, it's not going to make a lot of sense to you. I have just done this now, so I don't really know how well it's done, but let's just see. I'm just going to read it out loud and we'll see how it does. A college tutoring center introduces a digital tracking system and increase tutors' timely completion of session notes. Tutors even earn points that can be exchanged for preferred shifts or small gift cards, but the system's designers are divided about how best to award the points. One proposal is to give the points after every completed set of 4 session notes completed correctly, creating a predictable pattern. I'm skipping ahead. Another proposal is to award points unpredictably. A third option is to give points for the first qualifying submission. These are different kinds of schedules of reinforcement. I can tell you what their names are if you wanted to know, but students would know this already because we've talked about it in class perhaps. And then the discussion questions are, which schedule reinforcement do you think would lead to the most consistent long-term submission of session notes and why? Use concepts like resistance to extinction, response rate, and predictability in your reasoning. Those are all things that I probably would have talked about in class. They're definitely in the book, response rates, extinction. These are psychology terms, not terms I told it, right? These are terms it knew. It knew to bring up in discussion questions. How might the different reinforcement schedules in this scenario affect not just the frequency of note, but also the approach, perhaps, support your answer? So again, you can see that it wrote a scenario that was relevant to college students. I didn't really tell it to do that, but it did it, right? Kind of on its own. And it came up with discussion questions that, are reasonable on first blush. Oh, come on now. Gemini. So let me see if I can paste it a different way here. This is one of the things about different AI platforms is that they don't all work exactly the same way. And so sometimes you got to play around with it. So this should work better. So this came up with a different scenario. Julian, a dedicated freelance graphic designer, has noticed a significant shift in productivity and creative output depending on how he manages his workflow with his long-term clients. So it's a different scenario, but you can see it's about to go into how Julian is going to reward his clients or get his clients to do what he wants them to do. Julian has found himself hyper-focusing on the smaller immediate pay tasks during the day, yet he often pulls all-nighters to ensure his queue for the retainer client remains full, yada, yada, yada. So again, the point of this is anytime you use AI, what we say is that you should never take the first thing that AI gives you as the final thing. I'm sure that I could look at this and tweak some things, ask it to do, oh, I don't like this one, or add in stuff about the variable ratio schedule, or, I can revise this to my heart's content by asking AI to give me something different or revise it in some way. Of course, every AI platform is going to allow you to copy what it says. So you could copy that and put it into Word or put it into a PowerPoint, wherever you're going, however you're going to present it to students. And so there's always going to be a way for you to download what it says, either by copying it. Sometimes it will even produce a Word. I mean, if you use different AI platforms, they can actually produce PowerPoint presentations. They can produce Word documents. I'm sure that if I went back to Copilot and I said to Copilot, because it's a Microsoft product, if I said, create a PowerPoint slide that has this information in it, it probably would do that, right? Because it's within the Microsoft environment. So that's a cool thing, right? So this is really just trying to showcase how easy it is. Now let's talk a little bit more about prompts. And the best way to use prompts, best practices of prompts change over time. It used to be that they would tell you to do certain things, and now it's evolving, and actually it turns out that prompts are a little less important. Now the AIs are gotten better at sort of reading into what you want it to do so that you can sort of vibe prompt. I mean, you can kind of just give it more, vague prompts, but I still think the more detail you can give it, the better. And certainly the context is really important, right? So in my prompt, I said, hey, I teach introduction to psychology at the college level. That's important information, right? You don't want it to be creating a prompt that's for K-12 or graduate school. So providing the context is really important, and what discipline you're in. Sometimes I tell it I'm teaching honor students. I don't know if that makes a big difference, but it might. But if I was teaching seniors, that would be different than teaching an intro course. And so as much detail as you can give it about the context, I think is really helpful. It helps tailor what you get from it. And then you want to make the request very clear, right? I want you to create a case study that does the X, Y, and Z, right? Talks about schedules reinforcement for me, operant conditioning. And so you want to say, this is what I want you to produce for me is this. And then having some criteria is helpful too, right? So, include discussion questions or provide notes, or sometimes when I create activities, I say, okay, now that I've created this activity, now create a slide for me, or create an instructor guide so that I can follow along. Or something that I've just started doing recently is asking AI to, once I've got the active learning resource created, I ask AI to complete it as if they were a student. And so then it gives me a model of what students might produce. Sometimes I see that what it gives me is missing something important. And so then I go back to the prompt and say, okay, I got to change the active learning thing so that students don't make that mistake, right? Don't overlook that, or emphasize this more. It's really a matter of emphasis. And so I need to go back and emphasize this part more. This part's not as important. So, but I can also, sometimes I've shown the students that model response just to give them an idea of what I'm looking for. I don't always do that, but sometimes on occasion I've done that. So if you ask AI to pretend they're a student, it can do it, right? Complete this as if you were a student. And sometimes I think that's helpful.
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Do you use a different AI to ask it to do that than the one that created the case?
I have not used a different AI. I use the same AI.
Okay.
But it would be interesting, right? To give a different AI. Hey, here's the thing I'm going to do in class.
Yeah.
Pretend you're a student. That would be interesting. It could be interesting. There's a ton of subtle opportunities comparing different AI platforms with everything we do in teaching, right?
Yeah.
So that's a cool idea. I love that idea. Any other questions? Anybody have thoughts, questions before I turn you loose?
I have a question, but I'll ask the AI and see what it comes up with, and then I'll ask you.
Right on. Oh boy, that's no pressure. I gotta try and be as good as the AI. That's tall order. Okay. So I sent you an email with a document in it just before our session started, right? And so the idea is that you would use that document to work through writing a prompt. So you can pick a course that you want to try to use active learning in, and then pick a strategy that you think would be good for your course. Some of you already did that in the form you filled out, and then build your prompt using that three-part structure. If you look at the bottom, towards the bottom of that handout, there's a lot more information about prompting, what makes for a good prompt. So it's worth time to spend crafting your prompt so that it's got everything in it. And then, submit that prompt to whatever AI platform you choose to use, right? So Google and Gemini and Copilot are ones that have some protections for us, but again, we can use ChatGPT or Claude if you want. This is certainly not going to include any personally identifying information, so I think this is a very low risk activity in terms of that. So I'm going to give you 20 minutes. Yeah, right on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, people from the Zoom are back. That's great. So hopefully you had some good discussions about what you did and what the other person did to find out what they created. Anybody want to share with the whole group some of your insights or successes or challenges?
Yeah, I'll bite. I don't know if I was just the fastest one to the mute button, but our group had three different people in it. I chose to be incredibly vague in my prompts. I just said design an active learning activity about comparing the life cycles of these different plant lineages. And that's all I told it, really. I was like, let's see what happens. And it made a really good one. It called it a comparative mapping activity. And so it gave me a whole lesson plan. I thought it did a really good job. I would add a few questions and modify a little bit, but the information was accurate. Um,
Yeah.
and then we had another group member do a case study, and she said she's ready to teach her class tomorrow.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then our third member said she took her a while to get her questions together, but she's also interested in learning how to teach students about AI. So I'm not sure how.
No.
I think she did design as something trying to get students to think about inequality from a structural level. So I can't remember though, because my memory is bad, how well that went.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anyone else? That's all right. That's all right. So hopefully you had some fun with it and did something interesting. People in the room had some success. It's a struggle. I mean, it's an iterative process, right? You got to keep on going back and forth and trying different stuff, and that's when you get to something that's going to be really usable. Really, yeah.
To the case study and teaching students how to use AI. I did some AI stuff in my GSD last time and it went, I don't know, mixed, because a lot of them are like really, really against it. But I did a case study assignment and they didn't have to do this, but they could choose to do it if they want to. So they had to write their own case study outside of class. And then in class, I asked them to use ChatGPT or whatever they wanted to use to write, to prompt it to do a case study, and then kind of compare theirs with what it was, and
Sure.
then kind of like adjust theirs if they think that there's anything missing, and they liked it.
Very nice.
The ones that did it, some of them didn't want to use it, and that's fine.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Student resistance is a real thing. It's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of the ethical, environmental stuff that it really bothers them.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, I would love to have a group with more discussion of that in the classroom because I required my students to do these assignments. And definitely some of them are not happy about it, but mostly it appears to be they're doing them sort of, but some of them aren't really doing them. And so I can kind of tell they're not really doing them. And then there's been a lot of behind the scenes complaining. It's not a big group of they all know each other. Let's just put it that way. So I always can find out what they're saying behind my back.
Well, I'll just give a shout out to Lisa Blue. Oh, she's putting something in the chat. She
Yeah,
talked.
I put that up there. Sorry to interrupt. I
Okay.
put that up there on Canvas and showed it to them, but I mean, some of them, I think some of it's a political divide too. I mean, there's just sort of on the um sort of more liberal side or whatever, just a hard no about all of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, okay, that's a good idea, Lisa. I did a little example. Sorry, I feel like I'm taking over the meeting. Go ahead.
Right. A student resistance comes from lots of different reasons, right? And so, but it's something to pay attention to and really, you know, I try not to require that they use AI. I offer it to them. I suggest it, but if they don't want to use it, I always try to make it okay for them not to use AI. Like they're not going to be, so they're not going to be in trouble, and they're also hopefully not going to be disadvantaged.
You might try prompting AI to give you an alternate but similar assignment to the students that don't want to use it.
It's just we're getting meta, very meta here. Using AI to help not use AI. It's complicated. It'll do anything you ask it to do, really, whether it's good or not. That's the key, and that's really what I want to talk about, right? So, before we get to that, this is a slide from before. For me, one of the incredible powers of AI is that once you've got a prompt that gives you something good, you can just say to it, okay, I want 5 more, right? Because it can create endless numbers of whatever it is that you want it to do. So you want 5 case studies, you want 50 case studies. And so I think one of the books I read talked about, asking AI to make many, many more class handouts with activities so that, you could have a lot of variability within the classroom. He even talked, I think this is Jose Bowen's book. I think he even talks about you could collect information from your students about what they're into, create activities that were based on the things that they're into. And so you're like, okay, Susie, here is your active learning handout, your case studies about, whatever it is that you're into. And, so it could be sort of bespoke. And, once you had that information in an AI, you said, here are my students' numbers, not their ID numbers, but you can make up your own numbering system so that you're not giving in personally identifiable information, but you can say, here's the list of students and what they're into, create an activity for each one of these students that has these features. And then, I mean, I had not done that. That seems like a lot of work, sort of in some ways, to set it up, but having bespoke activities seems pretty cool. Lisa.
I did kind of some personalized projects in the nursing class, a DNP class last summer. And I asked, basically the nursing faculty want their students to be prepared to do their DNP project, to analyze their data. And most of them are going to have kind of a pre-test, post-test sort of a deal. And so I asked probably ChatGPT to, come up with data sets for all of them. Now I ended up having to tweak those, but I asked for scenarios based on their introductions from the introductory discussion board.
Oh, man.
I looked at what they said they did and had, gear it towards those specialties, and it worked pretty well.
It's really indefatigable, right? I mean, it will just do work until you reach your limit of your account limits,
Yeah.
but
And let me add, I did not give it the discussion board responses. I just told it, here are the areas I want.
sure. De-identifying, anonymizing.
Right. I just
Okay.
gave it, here are the, some of them were working in psychiatry or what have you.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I mean, again, I'm not gonna write that many case studies, right? Personally, but if I needed 10, I could have 10 just like that. And, even if it was just 10 different ones,
Yeah.
just to have some variability. So I think that's a superpower, the AI superpower. Okay, let's see. So before we end for today, I thought you might look at the end of your worksheet. There is a place where you can make a commitment. We know in psychology that actually writing something down and committing to using something increases the likelihood that you'll actually do it. So obviously, I'm not going to collect these. No one's going to collect these. This is for you. But if you wanted to make a commitment to use this approach, even if you want to use the one exact thing that you created, that's great. But if you want to use this approach, you want to use the active learning strategy that we talked about or you explored, that'd be great. I'm going to be sending you a post-session reference guide. I mean, the pre-session handout I gave you has a lot of the research. The post-session reference guide is a little more concise. I'll send that to you after the session's over, or maybe tomorrow or the day after that. We'll see when I get to it. But I also want to just a shout out to the FCT&L. We have the capabilities and the desire to work with you on an individual basis. So if you want to meet with me or someone else in the FCT&L to talk about active learning, we would love to do that. AI, we could do that. Active learning and AI, we could do that. So reach out to us. You can go into our website and find places to request some help. And thank you for being here today, and keep trying stuff. This is how AI works: is you try something and it doesn't work, and then you try it 6 months later and it does something incredible. And we're developing new capabilities all the time. So see what you can come up with. I guess the last thing I'll say before we finish today is that all of the materials that you saw from me today were created by AI, right? So this presentation, the pre-session, the live session, the post-session, all of that stuff was created with AI as a partner. And so, again, I think someone was saying in the room that not only can you say, I want a think, pair, share, but you could say, here's today's topic for my class. I've got 55 minutes. I want to have active learning. This is my teaching philosophy. Create a lesson plan for this day or for this unit. And it would do it. I've got, for one of my classes, I've got 3 and 5 day units that are all planned out, that have parts and they're building on each other. It's scaffolded and, I had to tweak it. I had to go in and shape it and push it around, but it's powerful, and it will create all the documents. I mean, I use Claude, but you can get it to create all the documents on other platforms as well. So thanks again for being here today. I appreciate everyone's attendance, and good luck, and let us know.
Thank you. Thank you.